Hello?
Hi, Susanna. How are you?
Hi, Linda. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Do we have a class today?
Yes, we do.
This is kind of weird. Let me just check. Let's see. Let me just text him because I don't think this is kind of weird because he usually never late. And it's been already 3 minutes. We're late.
Yeah.
Okay, I just texted. Let's see if he responds. If he doesn't, then I guess we don't have a class today.
Well, I think we do have a class, as he mentioned in the last post that he posted. He said, I'll
Yeah,
see you guys on Monday. So,
this is so weird.
and also just me and you.
I
There's
know,
no,
that's why I was like kind of weird because usually it's like the class is never late. Or we just got in the wrong link, which I don't think so. Or
no,
I don't
no,
know.
it's the same link that we just
We
click on it, the
always use
same
it,
one.
right?
Yeah.
This is pretty okay. We have Sanad also. No, okay, we have
We
4
are in the
people.
right class.
Okay.
Don't confuse.
Okay, we are in the right class. Okay, I would just want to make sure that we are in the right class.
No, the same link. It's the same link, the same number.
I know. It's weird. It's okay. Okay, at least I have now come in peace.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is breakout room.
Huh?
Is this breakout room? No.
Yeah.
No.
This is
No?
not the breakout room. I don't think this is the
Okay.
breakout room. Yeah, it's just like it's only us. It's just we having like student
Okay,
party.
only us. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. No professor.
Hello,
No.
ladies.
We are waiting for him.
It's a student party right now.
Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Is it gonna be Zoom meeting for ladies only?
I guess. I guess. Let's see.
Oh,
Let's see
dear.
what's ahead of us. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
I think this is Amina, right, Amina?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi,
Thank you. How are
Amina.
you?
Good. I can figure out because of your iPhone, just like it shows iPhone, so I know that's you.
Oh, right now iPhone again. I don't know. Because I don't have the computer or Chromebook something, and I use in my phone, and I write Amina, but I don't know again.
No,
iPhone.
go
That's okay, I'm
to
iPhone.
rename. Go to rename so you can put your name. You are using iPhone, right?
Yeah, I use iPhone.
So
iPhone,
you
right?
have
Before I was on for 12, and right now iPhone 13 is okay.
yeah, you can make it like a rename, and you can just like write again your name and gonna show up.
Okay.
Hello, Professor.
Hi,
Finally.
Professor.
I'm so sorry to be late. I was finishing up. Office hours went a little bit long. I am so sorry about that.
It's okay.
You
Professor, you're
confuse us. We
absent.
thought you were wrong, like a Zoom or a wrong
I
No,
know.
no,
link.
no. It was totally, the only thing wrong is my time management skills. Okay. Let me make sure I send out an announcement so that everybody understands. You know, I'll apologize here, but give me maybe 2 more minutes, then we'll get started here.
Just 2, not more.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, here we go. How are you guys? I heard, well, it's good that you guys, I think Linda, I heard Linda giving some
Yeah.
Canvas help. That is fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes,
doing
I did.
that. All right, we are in week 5 Zoom meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then, so I'll just send the announcement. You guys already know because you're here. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
Good,
Excellent.
thank you. What about you, Professor?
I'm
How
good.
was your weekend?
It was good. I'm good. I'm good. You know, some Mondays I feel really, I'm always pretty happy, you know, but some Mondays like lots of energy. Today I was a little like, a little 2 cup of coffee day, you know, but no, that's not a complaining. Life is good. Life is good.
Life is good, yes. Happy to hear that from you.
How about you, Sana? Did you do anything fun or interesting this weekend or busy?
Yes.
Busy?
Yeah, I discovered one fast food place and in Sunrise. It was really delicious. It's called Angry Bird.
Angry Bird. I'm gonna guess like chicken wings or fried chicken. Okay.
No, chicken strips and yeah, it
How
was delicious.
how was it cooked?
It was cooked what you want, like hot. They put a list of measurement, like for hot, are you wanna put it like country, which is regular, or mild, or call 911.
Oh, for spicy, for how
For
hot, huh?
spicy. Yeah.
Call
And then
911. Oh
every
my.
weekend I go to buy stuff for my wedding preparation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was outside the whole day yesterday.
Cool. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Very nice. And so are you getting married soon then? You were saying wedding preparation. What's going on?
Oh, hopefully. Hopefully.
What's gonna, I don't even want to know what's gonna happen. Oh.
Oh my God. My fiance is in Europe, not here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm still waiting to get his visa
Okay.
from the US embassy there.
Got
So
it.
since he get it, he will travel to here.
Got it.
Yeah, you know, when people get married here, they have to make appointment for the religious and court marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have to schedule it. I just was talking to him and I have to schedule everything. So, and then we will make a party here and then I will say bye to California, moving to Arizona.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah,
Arizona's nice. I like the desert. It's a little cheaper than California.
yeah,
Cool.
it is. Yeah,
That's
we'll see.
great.
It's been like 7 years I have living in California.
Okay. Are you, are you nervous to leave or happy or kind of both or what?
Oh, yeah, nervous a little bit because
Yeah.
I had to transfer my university there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I finished transferring to the University of Arizona.
Big change too, right?
Yeah,
Cool. Well, that's really exciting, Sanat. I mean,
we'll
those are,
see, Professor. I hope so.
that's really, really exciting. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, and I hope everything goes okay with the visas. That's always a stress.
Always the trust, yes.
Yeah.
Especially when they meet somebody and after they finish his interview, they ask him for some papers. Okay, why you didn't ask for those papers before the interview? Why after that?
Ay, 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 ay.
Yeah.
I hate that system. I remember me when my husband he came to Armenia, so we basically we meet there, and I went to the embassy, and the lady she was so rude, like the rudest American I ever met in my life.
Whoa.
Yeah, she basically threw all the photos and pictures on my face through the window. I was like, what the heck is going on? And then she got surprised. I was like, okay. And then she was not believing my story that we were engaged. So she thought it's a setup and all the paperwork, all the interview. I went there like 3 times, and then she denied, my me coming to USA.
Stop it.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay, so when I can come again? She was just like, never. Like the embassy,
Wow.
I was like, okay, thank you. So I cut out, and then I called my husband, the fiance that time, and I was like, she denied me. And then it was crazy. So he ended up coming there and go through all the, not nice conversations with them, and then they just got my passport after. It's very hard. Sometimes, the system, it just like it's up to them basically. If
That's
they
it.
want to let you go or if they don't want to let you go, it's not the system. So I hope he got the good one.
I was going to say, isn't it weird how in big systems like bureaucracy or government or whatever,
Yes.
it
Yeah,
still always comes down to one person though. Like, is that person smart or kind or competent? And
yeah,
if
I
not,
can
it can be-
definitely say it
Yeah.
was not the system. It has nothing to do
person.
with the system. It's just like a personal sympathy,
Yeah,
It's like the
totally.
empathy. So she just didn't like me, I guess.
Wow, that's really crazy.
Yeah, so yeah, I hope it just like, I know how it feels when she just like telling her story. I was like, oh,
But-
like I
Sorry,
hope
I
it's, like, a
remind
good
you.
start.
I was gonna say, Sanat, don't worry, that's not gonna happen. Don't get scared.
Exactly. It's different. Yeah, it's different from person to person.
Yeah,
I
it's
faced that.
different, and then it's weird.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
because
rem-
it's United States, so people are more chill here than there. It's like
more
kind of
rate,
the
more patience,
American
more papers.
over there. It's like when you go live somewhere, you kind of adopt like people's, kind of how people think and stuff.
Totally.
So she was like kind of mix of Armenian and American already. And I can feel that, I can sense that. Like, but when I came here, it's totally different. People more nicer, way nicer here than
That's
there. It's like,
amazing.
oh,
I
yeah.
remember when we applied for immigration from my country to here, and I was I was 19 or 18 at that time, or
Mhm.
17. Yeah, 17, 18. So I remember it depends. We were talking about the officers there, when they meet the families and talk to them, discuss everything, how their life, what about the stories that families when they apply to refugee or immigrant or visa. Uh, I remember there was a family from father, mother, and two daughters, and I was only me and my mom. She met the father, and she was really nice to him, and she met the mom, but she was really, really, really rude with the daughter. So the daughter, when she met the officer and she went out, she left the office, she was saying, "Oh my God, why she rude? Why she treat me like this?" She treated her like she knew something about her, but she was nice or good with the father and the mother. So I don't know the girl teasing her, or I don't know. Even
It's
when
just a personality. It's just some people, they just like to have that
it's
power.
officer personality, yes.
Yes, they just like to have that power. They feel like they are, the power over you,
Yeah.
it's just, there are some people who just get pleasure from that. So I guess
Yeah,
she was
it's.
type.
I think more and more, again, I'd like to live a long time more, but I'm going to be 40 soon. And I feel like as I keep getting older, I just feel like more and more, everything in life is just about connections between human beings. You know what I mean? Like it's everything. And that's sometimes the best, because sometimes humans are so kind and generous and beautiful. And other times you, like, even when you're being so kind and respectful, if one person's just very unhappy, let's just say that maybe they're a very unhappy person, that can be very frustrating,
Oh,
Yeah.
I know that.
I'm sure you do.
We all know.
I'm sure, I know, we all.
I know that. Oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's sad. It's a sad reality.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For better and for worse, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again, Sanat, I hope I have faith. We pray everything will be good.
Thank you.
We'll do our best. Your
I'm
husband,
sure everything will be okay.
your
Yeah.
fiance, your husband to be will be here soon. It's all good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amen.
Cool. Well, I think this will probably be our group. I love just talking to you guys. That's great. But I do want to make sure I do my job and teach you some stuff about poetry today. So let me make sure I'm sharing my screen here. Can you guys see these slides? Today's the 20th of September. You guys, can you see?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, it's good to see everybody. I saw Frank came in as well. So good to see you, Frank, and Anki's here, and Linda, of course, always good to see you guys.
Yes, thank you, Professor. How are you?
First, I'm doing okay. I am doing okay. And I'll just update my agenda here, because today we're going to keep talking about poetry. And today is really going to be the last sort of lecture day that I have about poetry, because we're going to practice some stuff. And then we're going to get you ready by the end of class today for the first sort of big writing assignment. I got to catch up pretty much with everything that's in Canvas is now graded. So that felt good for me. I hope it was good for you guys. And but I wanted to introduce the first major writing assignment at the end of class today, and make sure I answer any questions. You guys feel comfortable and confident knowing what you're going to be doing for the assignment. But I also wanted to show you one more thing in Canvas. So I sent out an announcement this weekend while I was grading. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody could see that if you go into the modules here, and I'm going to turn on student view, that the discussion activity, lesson 9 here, where we're going to practice responding to a poem, this is open and available in Canvas. And actually, if you haven't looked at it yet, don't worry about it. A lot of what we're going to do today is going to overlap. There'll be some connection between the two here. But I'm asking you for this assignment, you'll practice reading a poem using the 3 response questions from The River Speaks. I think that was one of the questions that everybody got correct on the lesson, on the quiz section. So after you've read the poem, Fire and Ice, I want you to share about these 3 questions. So again, get used to seeing these, you guys. You're going to do it on the major writing assignment too. So what happens to the persona, to the speaker in the poem? What's the central metaphor of the poem? If you've read the poem, I hope that you know the answer to this question. It's right there in the title. If you haven't read it, we'll do it today. And then 3, how does the poem end and why does it end this way? I wanted to show you as well, I'm just gonna click this document here that says open our ESLW 350 poem document. This lives in 2 places on Canvas. I'll show you the other one in a minute. But when you click it, it'll take you here to our list of poems. And these are the only poems that I'm gonna ask us to think about and read this semester, okay? I'll also tell you, if you haven't seen it, I put one of my own poems here at the end for you. And it's not because I think that I'm so wonderful and amazing. It's because for the poetry project assignment, I will give you the chance, if you want to, you can choose to write your own poems. And I think if I ask you to read your own poems, it's only fair that I show you some of my own. You know, with artistic stuff, sometimes people feel nervous or afraid. So we'll look more at this document later when I talk about the poetry project, but I just want to make sure that if you're here with me or if you're watching on the recording, when it says in lesson 9, responding to a poem, open the poem document, that's this, right? That's these poems that I've chosen for our class here. And then I'm asking you to respond to a specific poem called Fire and Ice, and that's this second poem in the document, okay, you guys? So when I say respond to Fire and Ice, I mean this poem right here in the document. Were there any questions about that lesson 9, the discussion activity? Any questions I can answer, small questions before we get started practicing some of this stuff today?
I do have a question.
Linda, let's go. Tell me.
I just confused about the first question and the last one. The first one, you mean what happens to the persona, the speaker in the poem, the meaning that the writer, right?
Yep. Remember, okay, we talked, this was in the first chapter, and I think I only talked about this 1 or 2 times. The best way to think about this is instead of thinking that every time you read the poem, that the person who is speaking the poem is the exact same person as the author. Maybe that's true sometimes, right? If I write a poem about my own experience in my family, for example, then probably I, the writer, am the same speaker of the poem. But just like when we start to read short stories, there could be characters, and a poet can absolutely create a character or a different type of person that is speaking the poem for them. Does that make sense?
No.
No?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me see if that's great.
I'm sorry for this inconvenience, Professor, but I just
No, please don't be sorry. Let me see if I can go to, okay, I'm going to open one of the examples from The River Speaks so we can all look at it together, and hopefully something that you even at least skimmed a little bit here. So let me open this up real quick.
So you mean main character?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, character, yes, Aki, thank you. If you would imagine that sometimes the character who is speaking the poem is the author, other times it's not. Let's see. I wanted to go to the Oranges poem. I don't know if you guys read this one. Did anybody read this poem?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very lovely. If you didn't read this poem yet, it's just really, really beautiful, right? It's about a young boy and a young girl, and they're sort of feeling probably attracted to each other. So in this case, when it says, the first time, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. This says, the first time I talked with a girl, I was 12, cold and weighted down with 2 oranges in my jacket. So I'll make this really simple, Linda. Is the persona in this poem the boy or the girl?
Okay.
I'm asking, is it who is I in this poem, boy or girl?
I think the boy.
Yes, exactly right, right? And just like if this were a story, or like Aki was saying, the main character. Okay, in the first line, we get this line saying, the first time I talked with a girl. Now, I sort of told you, if you read the whole poem, it's very clear that it's a young boy and a young girl. But obviously, right, the girl cannot be the persona of the poem. She can't be the speaker of the poem because the speaker of the poem is talking about her. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, it's
Thank
not
you.
always, of course, and it's a great question. We'll practice it with fire and ice today, so don't worry. We'll get more practice here. There's another one here, the Cups of Jade. I'll just read this one too. This is obviously a translated poem. This is from a Chinese poet from the 7th century. So this poem is over 1,000 years old and obviously translated into English. But let's say the same thing. I'm going to tell you the same exact thing that I just said. This poem is about a man and a woman. And I'm going to read the poem and just tell me who is the persona, who is speaking the poem, the man or the woman, okay?
Okay.
So here's the poem, Cups of Jade by Huang Pin. Where the lotus pool is fragrant with its flowers, we drank our last farewell from cups of jade. You thought I shunned you when I, quickly turning, hid my face from you and would not look again. Ah, but being man, how could you know, beloved, that it was to wipe the scalding tears away? So sad. So this poem is about a man and a woman. Who is the persona? Who is speaking this poem, the man or the woman?
I think the lady, she's talking to man.
And if Linda needs help, does anyone, it doesn't just have to be Linda, if you guys feel comfortable, is this poem being spoken by the man or the woman?
I think women.
How do we know? It is, Frank says woman, Linda says woman, I think Sanad too. How do we know?
Because she said, but being man.
There it is.
How could you know?
Frank, what were you going to say, Frank?
I think they're a little bit up to their shunning or turning away. Good. To hiding face.
Absolutely. And it's all in that third stanza, right, you guys? The persona says, ah, but being man, how could you, right? So if she's saying you are the man. So even though in this poem, she doesn't say, hey, I'm a woman and I was in this relationship or whatever it is, right? Whatever we think happened. We have to understand that the speaker, the persona in the poem is the voice, is the sort of person telling us what happened, right? Is the person showing us what happened. Now, to your original question, Linda, sometimes that is definitely the poet. Sometimes it's very clear, right? Like I'm writing about my own life and my experience, but other times, like Aki was saying, we might be imagining a character or we might be imagining a situation. So that's what I mean by persona.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Does it help a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Clear enough.
And we'll get, and like I said, we'll get more practice with it today. That's what today is for, after I talk a little bit about meter and rhythm. Okay, so that was Linda's question. What happens to the persona? Any other questions about this lesson 9 and the discussion assignment?
Yeah, I was wondering about the third one too. Like, you mean, how does the poem end? Like our opinion about that? Or just describe the...
Good question.
Like the poetry.
I guess how the poem ends. This is, and again, now I'm going to go back to our book here, or the chapter from the book, right? Because why is my scrolling so slow? You guys, forgive me. Here we go. Okay, and a lot of the stuff that I'm saying here, you guys, is in the River Speaks, the PDF. It's on page 12 here, just to make sure everyone can see. And this is the paragraph on page 12 where he really talks about it, right? Where he really gives some more examples. So if you want to, get even more specific, detailed information, go back and look at page 12 again. But here's what he says for this question 3. And how does the poem end, and why does it end this way? Now, he gives some examples about the Oranges poem, and he's sort of imagining questions you might ask yourself at the end of the poem. So he sort of says, to ask, What effect does the adult have on the boy? How does the boy feel? You know what? Instead of doing this, I'll say this. Linda, go back and read page 12. And instead of me talking, let's just practice doing this third question about how does the poem end and why.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry if I bother you by my questions.
No, this is my, this is the way I like to teach. I love lecturing is fine, but answering student questions is where the magic happens. So let's just do this, right? So if you haven't looked at the discussion yet, or if you haven't looked at the poem, I've got it here. This is sort of like a classic, oh, wow, excuse me, I'm doing this wrong. I didn't want to make the text bigger. I just wanted to zoom in. Okay, this is it, right? So let's ask some hopefully pretty basic questions, my friends. How many stanzas are in this poem?
3.
Stanzas are in this poem?
3
Well,
phrases.
Stanzas. This is the poem. Remember, stanzas are like paragraphs in poems. Do I see any line breaks here?
Yes.
Where?
After ice.
No.
Great.
Now maybe let me be clear here. Let me be clear. Maybe we're switching lines and stanzas. All poems have lines, okay? But how many stanzas are in this poem? 2. No. Susanna, you feel, I see, is this a question or your answer? Susanna says 1. Oh, I'm so happy we're going back and reviewing. Remember, this is not to make you feel bad. It's just to help you practice. For example, this is 1 stanza, right? I've got a title, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines, no breaks. But this is very different, if you notice, from this poem, which I cannot even show you the whole poem because it goes on a little longer. Let me ask you this, though. How many stanzas right now are in blue in this poem?
A lot. Oh, 3.
Thank you.
3.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's even say, how many stanzas are in blue right now?
2.
Thank you. How many stanzas in this poem?
Just 1.
1.
I agree. How many stanzas in this poem? Oh, wait, I'm missing
2.
one. I got to get it. I forget that the last line is maybe the most beautiful line in this poem. So I want to make sure. This poet is doing something very interesting, right? Where, how many stanzas in this poem?
4.
This poet, now we could talk about this poem, you know, we could, if this was just a poetry class, you know, we could go really deep, but this poet is doing something that not many poets do, which is a 1-line stanza, right? This poet's got 1 line and then a new stanza after that. And then even a very short 2-line stanza. And then even ends with another 1-line stanza. So, you know, you could take a whole workshop in the structure of stanzas and how poets organize that, you know, but this class is really, my goal is to give you a sort of introduction to understanding poetry, not to do a really deep dive. But if I go back to the poem that we're going to analyze together here in practice. So Fire and Ice is 1 stanza, and I already said it, but how many lines are in this poem?
9.
Yes, Linda's.
9.
Thank you. I'm jumping around here, so let me make sure I'm recording our answers. So number of stanzas, 1. Number of lines, 9. So we could say,
Not 9 lines.
how many? I'm sorry.
How do I count? Oh, over there? I thought it's 11.
Oh, this is, I'm sorry, and this is the author's name and this is the title. We don't include the title in the line of poetry.
Okay.
No, it was a very good,
top to bottom.
very good question, Susanna. And you know, this is a document that I made, so I wasn't sure how to make it clear to you guys. So I'm sorry if it wasn't super clear. Yeah, the underline and the bold, this is supposed to be the title, you guys. And here's sort of where the poem begins. So yeah, we've got 1 stanza, we've got 9 lines, and look at, we're answering these questions before we've even read the poem, right? The basic structure of a poem, I hope that you guys feel really comfortable with, because that's, you know, that you guys are all more than able to sort of look at a poem like this and answer those questions. So this poem has only one stanza. There are 9 lines. That's it. We don't even need to worry about that. Can we do the same thing? Remember enjambment and caesuras? Do we remember someone who feels comfortable or even wants to? What's the difference? What's enjambment and what's a caesura? And if you need a refresher, I'm feeling really generous. I'll just put the definitions up on the screen for you guys. But can someone explain it to me in your own words?
I think the period was the caesura, right?
Mm-hmm. And not just a period, Susanna, but any punctuation, anytime the writer is giving you punctuation to slow you down, that's a caesura, right?
Yeah.
And enjambment is what?
Enjambment is period.
Yes, an enjambment is an example of a line that ends with no punctuation, right? No punctuation. For example, in the first line, we have a comma at the end of the line. Is this caesura or enjambment?
Caesura?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in line 2, we've got a period, caesura or enjambment.
Gem.
We caesura or enjambment with a period.
Caesar.
Ooh, I'm like, I'm not the only tired one on Monday, you guys. You guys needed 2 cups of coffee too. Remember,
I'm
enjambment.
confused.
Okay, that's fine. That's why we review stuff. Enjambment is when a poet chooses to end a line or stanza mid-sentence. That is, the poet has the logical meaning of the sentence continue into the next line without a break. We looked at some of these examples from last week, but remember here, I'll read the poem one time and then we'll think about it. So this is Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So we get some rhymes in there, you guys. It'll feel a little more comfortable for you. But if you notice at the end of line 1, I've got a comma. At the end of line 2, I've got a period. At the end of line 3, nada, right? This whole sentence, we could say this as a, like I could do this, right? I could do that. I could move this next line up and make it just one long sentence because this whole sentence continues, right? The meaning of desire continues onto I, but the poet chose to break the line, right? To start a new line and didn't give us any punctuation. That's all that enjambment is. When a line ends with no punctuation and the idea, the meaning continues into the next line. We could even say the same thing. Actually, if you notice here, something really unique about this poem that we'll talk about, what's going on at the end of these lines? Do we have enjambment or caesura? What do we notice the end of the lines in this poem?
Enjambment.
Where?
Oh, there is no
Caesura?
Yeah, there it says shut it.
You've got it. You've got it flipped, Frank. I think you've got it flipped in your mind because I've got question mark, period, question mark, period, question mark, period, question mark, period. I've got all of the lines end with a punctuation, right? So there's no enjambment in this poem at all, none. This poem has clear stops at the end of every single line. And I'll give you a hint, if you think about your children, this is true in all languages, by the way, you guys, this poem is not only for children, but it's sort of meant to be understood for children. And many children's poems give you that full stop, right? Just so you hear the example without even doing an analysis, right? So this is, if we see a poem that has no enjambment as an example, this is called How Many, How Much? And this is by an American poet named Shel Silverstein. How many slams in an old screen door? Depends how loud you shut it. How many slices in a bread? Depends how thin you cut it. How much good inside a day? Depends how good you live 'em. How much love inside a friend Depends how much you give them. And there's two things, if you notice the way I read that, and again, for people who have kids, this is very typical of children's books and stories and poetry, right? Is you get this kind of natural rhythm. The rhyme will help you start and stop. And the punctuation in a poem like this really tells the reader, stop, full stop, slow down. And what you notice is we also get at the full stops. Notice that this is where our rhymes are, right? Shut it, cut it, live them, give them. And I was gonna, I'm jumping around a little bit today because your questions were so good right at the beginning. But I do want to talk about rhyme today. What you notice is if you have a word that rhymes and then you put a period by the words that rhyme. So if you have rhyming words and the author slows the speaker down, those rhymes are even more like right in your face, right? They really jump out. Because I hope that it was clear. I mean, the rhymes in this poem are really obvious. Am I wrong? Do we disagree?
No.
Good. And I want you to understand that this enjambment, this caesura, that has a big impact on how the speaker will understand the rhythm and absolutely how they will understand the rhyming as well, right?
Mhm.
Linda, you can't hear me anymore. Can you guys still hear me? Susanna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Linda, I don't know what's going on.
I have a question.
Please, Frank, please.
So you said this has no jammet, right? This
poem,
one has,
how
this
many?
poem have no jammet because
No.
this literature tell us to this has to be somewhere you have to rhythm, have a rhythm. So the rhythm is explain the character of this feature of this poem. Is that correct?
There's two things. One thing is, so you had two interesting ideas there, Frank. One is really simple, okay? Enjambment, don't try not to, easy for me to say, but try not to overthink enjambment. It just means, is there punctuation at the end of a line? If there's a question mark, if there's a period, in Fire and Ice, if there's a comma, that's not enjambment. That's a caesura. That's the author telling you to slow down by using punctuation. If there's no punctuation, right? This, like in this example, Frank, from what I've tasted of desire, no period, no comma, nothing, right? Then I have enjambment. That's an example of enjambment, right? Does that make sense, Frank?
Still confusing.
Give me one more second, Frank.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I heard an alarm in something's going off. Okay, it's better. I'm better. It's all better. Okay, let me see if I can try one more time, Frank. But Frank, do you see how in this line that I have blue, do you see, look at the word desire. There's nothing after it, right?
Yes.
Now look at the word fire. What's after the word fire?
Period.
Thank you. What's after the word twice?
A comma.
Yep. What's after the word hate?
Nothing.
Now where there's nothing, that's enjambment. He still sounds suspicious. He still sounds like, But just to make this, and then I want to get to your second point, Frank. So if we think about analysis of this poem, which is what we're really talking about, enjambment examples are line 3, right? From what I've tasted of desire, nothing. And then line 4, 5, 6. I think I know enough of hate, nothing. Line 7, to say that for destruction, ice. Line 8 is also great and would suffice. Yes. Now, caesura is where we've got a comma or a period, Frank. So for example, where do we see an example of caesura?
This after fire.
Thank you. So line 1. And then after ice in line 2.
Right, that's it.
We got 1, 2, 3 more lines with caesura. So where else? Anybody else, either in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Where else do we see examples of caesura in the poem? Line 1, comma, line 2, period.
4, 5, and the last one.
Good. Line 4, period. Line 5 twice, and line 9 at the end. We've got a period. So this, I know that we took a little time, and if even, you know, Frank, don't worry. This is why we practice it. But this type of analysis that we're doing, you can always do this for any type of poem in any language. It's the same thing. How many stanzas? How many lines? Where's the caesura? Where's the enjambment? Of course, we translate the vocabulary for talking about poetry is different, but it's all the same elements, right? This is all the same structure for poetry. Okay, any other questions about caesura or enjambment?
Not that, but I have a question. You said we have to do our own poem.
You don't have to. We'll talk. Let's talk about that at the end. I'm jumping around too much already, Susanna. Let me try and stay a little focused. You know, it's hard for me anyway.
I touched that. I was like, okay.
Option. I said you'll have the option. Okay, you'll have the option. Okay, so that's a quick, well, maybe not so quick, but important review of lines, stanzas, caesura, and enjambment, right? These are some of the 4 most common ways that the poet will show you how to read the poem. Now, Frank's second question was, when I was talking about the connection between caesuras and enjambment, where I was talking about pausing and the rhythm or the flow of the poem, right? And that's a really important question, Frank. And that's what I wanted to talk about today in the context of Fire and Ice, okay? So first though, remember, alliteration. Does anybody remember alliteration? We've forgotten everything over the weekend. Alliteration means same first letters at the beginning of words, right? Fierce friend, friend for life, or many majestic mysteries. Or in Spanish, one of my favorite lines from Neruda, y sino sombra, sino sangre. Same letter at the beginning of the words. Consonants means same letters, but it can be at the beginning, middle, or end, right? Soon, wound, wound, noon. We've got different vowel sounds, not true rhymes, but lots of ends all over the place. And then assonance is when we've got the same vowel sounds. And this can often feel like, I saw Linda in the chat, her audio is fixed. That is great. Then we have the same vowel sound, right? E, 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 flee, fee, sweet, slee, stree. So that's alliteration, consonants, and assonance. Do we remember this, or do we want more examples, or can we just practice?
I think let's practice.
Let's go. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to read through the poem one more time, and let's see if we can hear any alliteration or consonants or assonance in the poem. So again, really hear what we're doing. This type of analysis is really just about the sound of the poem, right? This is, you know, to Linda's question, a little different than the persona. That's a different type of analysis. This is just pure sound. So, Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice.
Ice, fire.
There's lots of amazing stuff in this poem, and it's very short, but there's some really cool stuff going on in it, right? So Susanna, what was the one you wanted to point out?
I just wanted to ask, like, the first 2 sentences that some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. So yeah. Is there something over there?
Totally. How about what are the first 2 words in the poem?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like the first 2 words.
Yep. Some say. And in fact, it becomes really powerful, even just listening to Susanna, I could hear it. He has the same 2 words in both lines, right? Like the first 2 words start line 1 and line 2. So some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. And notice, even when I'm saying it, I can't help but make some of these same sounds. So Susanna already pointed out, some say, we've got that. What else do we have?
Desire, fire.
Good. What do you want to call desire and fire? Consonants, assonants? What's the similar sound there?
Let me check.
Yeah, please.
Just a consonant.
Fire, desire, are those vowel sounds or consonant sounds that overlap?
No, those are not consonants.
I'll give you a clue. I was going to say, if it sounds like a true rhyme, usually that's going to be the assonants. That's usually vowels, right? Fire, desire, right? Ire, ire. That's where we have the exact same sound.
Twice, twice. I'm just jumping through lines.
Oh,
Excellent, excellent. Who else? Susanna can keep going, I know, but does anybody else want to get in there?
Suffice.
Yeah.
Hate great.
Yes, thank you. Excellent. Andre, thank you. Hate, great. Notice also, this is like we talked about. There's a reason that the first week I show you a poem that doesn't rhyme, because notice when we get some rhymes, it's like what our brains just, that's what we see right away, right? That's what we focus on, which is beautiful. You should do that, right? And okay, I think, do we have most of the true rhymes? Fire, desire, ice, twice. Do we have ice twice? Yes, Susanna gave us that one.
I was looking at something else. I just
Please.
Oh my god, I lost the line. It was the ice. I was gonna point out the I letter, but if it had a parish twice.
Yes, twice. So which one here? So we have ice in line 2, twice in line 5, ice in line 7,
and suffice.
And suffice in line, and that's line 9. Absolutely right. Yeah, ice, twice, ice, suffice. Absolutely. And notice, and now we're not going to go too deep into this because, you know, we're at the very beginning here, but notice fire, desire, fire. We sort of see these rhymes moving around, these different words that rhyme at the end of the line, right? Now, how about some other alliteration or consonants? There is other alliteration. For example, just in line 1, some say the world will end in fire. World will end. World will end.
W.
Absolutely.
And also there is.
There's some fun stuff in line 4 too.
All those who favor.
Favor fire. Line 4.
Do I see some consonants over here? But if it had a parish twice.
Perish twice. So where's the pe twice? Those sounds? Perish twice.
No, actually, I was looking to alteration, not the consonants.
For which one? P
no.
PT?
No. If it, I was looking at I.
Yeah.
No.
Which line? I'm sorry, line 4?
2, 3, 4, 5. Line 5. But
if it even just those sounds together.
Perish twice. I mean, not the twice. No, twice is not going to work. But
this is if I do the vowel sounds. So, but if it had to perish twice, I. Those are the vowel sounds, right? Easier for me to do. I'm a native speaker, right? But I. Yeah, I guess you got you do have some
yeah.
Ish. So Okay, I like that. Yeah, let's do that. If it perish. I want to make sure it's clear that I'm talking about the second syllable there in perish, right? For that second vowel sound. Good. And now one thing you'll also notice, and this is again my big clue as I get ready to show you a little bit about rhyming today. If you've got poems with this type of rhyme in it, you're probably best to just talk about the rhyme instead of trying to talk about alliteration and consonants, right? Alliteration and consonants is really important when you've got poems that don't have true rhymes. It's really important to notice where those sounds that go together are in the poem. But if you've got a poem like this, I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but those rhymes are very comforting, right? Like that's kind of, like I said, what the brain wants to settle on is fire, ice, desire, fire, twice, hate, ice, grates. You know, that's kind of what what we usually notice right away. So that's again my big clue. If you're going to analyze poems, right, when we start to do an analysis instead of a response, if you've got a rhyming poem, focus on the rhymes. Right? If you've got a poem that doesn't have a lot of rhyme, you really need to look for that alliteration and consonants even more, right? Because that's, go ahead, Susanna.
I don't know if there is something like that in English. You know, do you know what's the name those, I mean, what is the structure? It's like the first letters of each line. It's like a word. How you say it, how you call that?
Yeah. Is this an acrostic, I think? Let me see. Yes, this is. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I remembered that.
Yes.
So this is obviously like for young children, forgive me, it's very simple here, but yeah, like, so winter wonderland, ice is slippery, but the first letter spells winter all the way down, right, Susanna?
Yeah, I just, I know I just came to me because I used to write my poems kind of.
Cool, absolutely.
It was for the school magazine. I mean, not the school, the university magazine.
Yeah, no, there's famous English poems. It's not just for, you know, when I just Google image searched it, you get something really simple. I think, what's the one?
Complex. Mine was all the way.
Yeah, oh, no, of course. There's very famous, like Edgar Allan Poe is a very famous American author. And he writes a poem about, I think I don't know if he's got some problems in his family, you guys. You can, you know, he looks like an okay guy, but he's writing a poem to his, I think his lover or someone he wants to be in love with, and her name is Elizabeth. At the very first word is Elizabeth, but if you notice all the way down, what does it spell, Susanna?
Elizabeth.
Exactly right. So we've got an example, and again, very famous American poet doing exactly what you just said, Susanna. So the poem is to Elizabeth, but the first line is E for Elizabeth, L for love, I for in, and all the way down, the first letter in each line spells Elizabeth again, exactly like Susanna was talking about.
Mine was 12 lines.
Oh, I heard Frank go, ooh, yeah. So that's special. I love it. No, that's great. This is a type of poem. I'll put it in the chat. As it says here, this word acrostic, that just means that's a poem that does that thing that Susanna was just talking about, right? The first letter in each line spells something when you go down, right? When you go down. Now, this is tricky. I mean, good. I'm glad that Susanna got to play with this and do this, but sometimes this can be very hard.
I was just wondering if we're going to do something like that.
No, I'll tell you what you're going to do. Okay. Anything else about questions or examples or sounds, as I just talked about the analyzing the sounds, rhyming, punctuation, rhyming, alliteration. Any other questions about the sounds in fire? Yes, Frank.
Is there any consonants this poem?
Good question. We've got some say, that's at the beginning. World will, that's at the beginning. End in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Favor fire, FF. But if it had to perish twice, not really. When I was talking to Susanna a minute ago, I was thinking about the sh sound at the end of perish and twice at the end of twice, but those are similar, but it's not the same sound, right? One's the sh, and one is s. Those are different sounds. I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction. I don't think so, Frank. I think he does most of his sound. He's playing with sound with alliteration and true rhyme. I don't see a lot of consonants in this poem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Anybody else about consonants, assonance, alliteration in this poem? Okay, now I did want to talk about the next one because like we were talking about the discussion 9, excuse me. What is the central metaphor of the poem? Now, I know we didn't talk about metaphor for too long last week, but I hope, Lord help me, that this is clear. What is the central metaphor of this poem?
Is.
What did you say, Linda?
Is.
Thank you.
Like the one that it's like another poem before, like on line 8.
Yes.
Is also great.
What is also great?
It's like a metaphor.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Linda. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Yes. Linda is saying metaphors are where you say that something is something else. This was last week's lesson, right? A simile is like a drum, and a metaphor, it says it is a drum. But be careful here, because sometimes the be verb is just the be verb, right? He doesn't say, he's just describing it. He's saying it is great. There's a central image in this very short poem. For example, what is the name of this poem?
Fire and Ice.
But is he talking about fire and ice in this poem?
No.
They're talking about
something
like
similar
peace or a war or something like that.
Okay, now Frank, now we're getting into the response territory, which I love, but let's be very clear that he's very clear with his words in this poem. And how do we know he's very clear? They rhyme, right? So some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Now I've got two images, right? I've got fire and ice right at the very beginning, okay? Fire, ice, fire, ice. Now, if I keep going, from what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. Now, notice, what's the word that fire rhymes with? What is the word that he rhymes fire with? It's in line 3.
Like a desire?
It says
Thank you, yes.
And
so it's absolutely.
Favor?
Yes, no, it's desire. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So notice again, right away, he's linking these two words just from the rhyming. Fire, desire, fire, desire, fire, desire, fire, desire. Then he says, if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So Frank was talking about war and fighting and all that good stuff. But notice I've got two very clear words here, desire and hate. So which one is desire, ice or fire?
Desire is ice, probably hate is fire.
Nope, other way.
Nope.
Nope.
The other way.
I'm glad that I'm so grateful to Frank for still not being sure and guessing, and it's okay to be wrong. It's beautiful. Now, and I'll make your life real easy in this poem, Frank. We know we could do a deep analysis of this, Frank, but again, ask yourself, where's the rhyme, right? Desire and fire. He's telling us these two words go together, right? He's with the rhyme. He's saying these two words go together. Right? And now he does a little bit different here. He doesn't rhyme ice and hate. Instead, he rhymes hate and great. So we do have to sort of make this connection here. But if you look at this, we'll start on line 5. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So this line, like Linda was talking about, the be verb here on line 8, and also is giving us some very important information, right? He's sort of saying, look, like Frank was saying about the war, right? And I mean, we get it in the very first line here. Some say the world will end in fire. So right at the very beginning, when we think about the meaning of this poem, he's sort of saying, okay, how will the world end? In fire or in ice? But of course, we understand he's not talking about a snowstorm and a volcano, right? He's using a central image here, a central metaphor to describe desire and hatred. And he's sort of saying, how will the world end, right? Which one will cause more harm to the world? And that's where, Frank, your feeling, our sort of feeling as the reader of, wait, is he talking about war? Is he talking about fighting? Like, you're absolutely correct, Frank. You got that feeling, right? But now what I'm trying to show you is, why did you get that feeling? Because hopefully a poet like Robert Frost, who's, you know, basically a genius. I mean, like, he's one of the most important American writers in the 20th century. Certainly one of the most important American poets. He's making choices. You know, this isn't by accident. It's not an accident that fire and desire rhyme. You know what I mean? It's not just because they sound good together, which they do. It's because he's trying to make a connection between those two things. And when I was grading,
emotions, let's say.
Say again, Linda.
I said, like, he tried to connect between these two emotions, like a hate or desire or fire and ice.
It's almost like, let me see if I've got my slide here. I'll move this up again. I'm sort of jumping all around today. You guys forgive me. But if you think about this, this is like in the quiz when if you missed points in the quiz about the images question, it's because people didn't really clearly understand, or didn't, maybe they, you know, like I said, we're just skimming the reading, whatever, it's all good. But images, oh my goodness, forgive me. I'm trying to multitask, and that's never good for my brain. Susanna knows it's not, multitasking isn't possible.
I mean, because it's a hate, something that people have it, let's say, would desire the same thing. So it's kind of emotions, right?
Totally. But if you tried to write a poem about hate, this is what Professor Noor is saying in the River Speaks chapter 1. Why are images so important? If you wrote a poem that was just called Desire and Hatred, and you wrote a poem that was like, wow, you know, some people hate a lot of stuff, and I think that that's going to kill all of you. Like, it wouldn't really be a poem. That'd be more like an essay. What a poet does is show you an image, give you an image in your mind to say, picture fire. Right now, we all have some feeling about fire. We all, maybe we see a fireplace, maybe we imagine a campfire, maybe, who knows, whatever the listener imagines for fire, right? But we have a specific concrete image of fire. And then what the poet does is pair this up here with a symbol, right, with desire. And I could say the same thing. We have an image for ice, and here he pairs it up with hatred. And then in this poem, he does something even more specific and interesting, I think, is where he says, okay, well, not only would I say that fire is like desire, or fire is desire, or desire is fire, or hatred feels like ice, or hate is cold. That's also very interesting, right? Like when we analyze our literature, you'll start to see how symbols and metaphor and simile are very powerful just by themselves. But then in the poem, in the first line of this poem, he asks this, he doesn't even ask a question. He says, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. I mean, right at the very beginning, the first two lines, he tells you, hey, I'm talking about the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, imagine if we just have these two lines, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Now, if those were the only two lines in the poem, like I said, it would be very normal for you to go, oh, like he's talking about snow and volcanoes. Or again, we live in California. We know about fire. It's horrifying, right? Like maybe we'd be thinking about forest fires and snow. But as the poem continues, we see how he starts to make these connections, again, to, as Professor Noor says in the textbook, more abstract ideas, right? Because how do you paint a picture of hatred? It's almost impossible. You know, how do you paint a picture of desire? Or how do you define desire? It's very hard. And that's why he gives us these images, because all of us as humans, we have this connection to some specific concrete images in our mind. And I think sort of my own personal favorite poems are the ones where the poet takes an image that you're familiar with, fire, and connects it through metaphor, simile, and symbol to some other deeper, bigger, abstract idea. And you go, whoa, like, I never thought about hatred like ice. That's really interesting. You know what I mean? And that's sort of what we're looking at in this poem. And that's more that, so when I say what's the central metaphor of this poem, the reason that I chose it for this discussion activity, here in Canvas, is the central metaphor for this poem is right in the title. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the title is the central metaphor. Does that make sense? I know that these are, again, speaking of abstract, these are some abstract ideas. I'm asking you to think about literature in new and different ways, but does this make even a little bit of sense?
Yes.
Linda says yes.
Like when I read it, like it's just like come to my mind when I read it like yesterday.
Yeah.
The first letter when he said, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice, just like it come to my mind, heaven and hell.
See, now we're talking, Linda. Now we are absolutely talking, right? Because I think, of course, did anybody else have the heaven or hell feeling?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think that's on accident, Linda. I don't think that's on accident either.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. It's interesting then in that now we're sort of just discussing the poem. It's interesting, though, because fire and hell were pretty, I told you, I was raised Catholic. I understand. But but ice and heaven is kind of interesting, right? That's not as, maybe we think of clouds or we think of the sky, but again, really interesting. Now I don't even have a full opinion on that, Linda. I just think it's really interesting to say, ooh, what is it like to think about heaven and ice, or this kind of cold feeling, cold and the opposite of hell? Again, there's no wrong answer. I just think it's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of interesting to think about with this type of poem. I love it. So Linda thought about fire and ice, heaven and hell. Fantastic. Susanna agrees. So now, again, when I sort of say here in question 2, and we're just practicing responding now. So what's the central metaphor of this poem? When you answer this type of question, excuse me, I'm so sorry. You could absolutely say, oh, the poem is about fire and ice. There's this metaphor about fire and desire. But for me, because remember, response is, how did the poem make you feel? Ooh, this reminded me of heaven and hell. And, that was a very powerful image, or it made me think about this, or some other book that I read, or all of those things that the metaphor, the symbol, the images remind you of. Absolutely, you will talk about those in your response section of the poem, right? That's part of your responding to the poem versus, the structural analysis of the poem. Does that make sense, Linda?
Yes, Professor, thank you so much.
Cool. Who else? I've been talking a lot. I've said a lot of things. So please, if you're not like Linda or Susanna and you're like, oh my God, what is Jeff talking about? Stop. Let's talk about it right now.
Because I'm kind of translating at the same time.
Yeah, please. You're translating.
No, it's like the meaning. It's because metaphor. It's when I trying to find out like in our meaning, like how is it going to be in the poem. It says it's the different meaning of the poem, like the I don't know how to say that word. It's it's so hard.
Deeper, we talk about deeper meaning.
If there is a it's written in one way, but it's like basically doesn't mean that. So there is a deeper meaning of the
That's
text.
it.
So I was trying to kind of analyze that. So
that's it. And that's what I mean, right? When I talk about responding and responding versus analyzing, if you think about, and now I'm going to use a metaphor here. I mean, metaphors are, humans think in metaphors, really. I mean, the mind really, anyway, I could go into a whole thing about that. It doesn't matter. But my metaphor would be like, if you think about like the surface level, right? If you look at like, this metaphor is so common that we don't even think about it, but like think about a lake, right? The surface of the lake it'll tell you what's going on, right? Like, are there ducks or birds on top of the lake? Or is there any, are there plants growing on top of the lake? Or is the lake just perfectly still, right? Like beautiful, clear, perfect still lake. But underneath that lake, maybe then there's the animals underneath the lake and it's going crazy. Or on top of the lake, it's really windy. The wind is blowing on the surface of the lake, but down under it's very calm and still, right? And that's sort of the same way. The structure of the poem, like I was saying, how many stanzas, how many lines, what's the rhyme scheme? All of that is the surface, right? We can sort of look at the poem and say, okay, this is what the poem is offering us on the surface. Ooh, there's some nice rhymes. Ooh, it's 4 stanzas. Ooh, only 1 stanza. That's very interesting. And then the deeper analysis, right below the surface, is like Susanna was saying, okay, but what's up with the symbols? Like, what's up with the metaphor? What's the poet actually trying to say in addition to the surface level, right? Because the surface of the lake is also part of the lake. It's not as if like only one is correct. I mean, they both come together to create the poem, right? And to create the meaning that we understand.
It was interesting because, when I first read it, just kind of like take me to the religion. And then the second one, it took me like kind of connection, like emotional emotions, the desire, it's like a passion, the fire is the passion, the cold is the hate, like it's kind of, the relationship thing. The person. So I was like kind of confused. I was like, what is the metaphor?
Cool. I love it. Yeah. And I think, again, it's really interesting. A good poem can do that, right? Where it's sort of like, I think the metaphor in this poem is very obvious, but because he doesn't do it in an obvious way, it doesn't feel like, and just to go back to this poem,
it just gives general idea. So I'm trying to get it, but I was like, I don't know, it's maybe Monday for me too, but I'm not.
Yeah. But we could do another one. There's another poem in here that has a very strong metaphor in it that we could look at. But are there any questions about what we were just talking about, the metaphor in this poem? And remember, here's some more information about metaphors. And then I'll connect this back up. I want to make sure that this makes sense for you guys here when you look at it later.
Yeah, we can see it on Canvas on pages. Pages.
Yes. Any other questions about this poem before I look at another one to talk about metaphor? If we have time, we'll come back to this poem because I want to talk about rhythm and rhyme a little bit. I do. But metaphor is very important because it's very important not only for the poems, but for the books. Metaphor is a central tool for literature everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Let's look at one more poem then. It's down at the bottom here. And again, let's just think. Okay, so I'll ask you again. I'm going to read this part in blue. How many stanzas?
Did I say it or?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I love, remember, lots of ways to participate. So people can type in the chat or just be silent, but you know how I teach. I need one other student to talk to. Yeah, we've got 4 stanzas, and let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines. All right, so first of all, let's do a little bit of context. The title of this poem is called Harlem. Does anyone know what Harlem is? And if not, I'll put this up on the screen. Harlem is a neighborhood in Upper Manhattan, New York City. It is bounded roughly by Frederick Douglass Boulevard, blah, 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 blah. Then we get some deep information. Let me show you one important thing here. Harlem was predominantly occupied by Jewish and Italian Americans in the 19th century, but African American residents began to arrive in large numbers during the Great Migration in the 20th century. In the 1920s and 30s, Central and West Harlem were the center of the Harlem Renaissance, a major African American cultural movement. Now, so here we've got some, this is basic info, right? If you just Google this, you could see Harlem is a part of New York City that in the early 20th century was where free Black people post-Civil War were living at the time.
This is about the movement.
Let's find out. So the title is Harlem, right? So again, thinking about titles and metaphors, okay? Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Now we've got lots of similes in here. So hopefully your simile brain is going off because we've got the whole poem is like a simile. And then we've got a deeper meaning here. So someone give me an example of some similes in this poem.
Remind the simile.
This word is your key for simile. Like.
Similar, yeah, okay.
So what are some of the similes in this poem, you guys?
Sweet.
Yes, good. Like a syrupy sweet, like a syrupy sweet. Now I want to be back here. Remember, if I go to my slide here from last week, a simile is simplistic and is supposed to leave the reader with an image that the author gave them. So let me make sure that my, I think I have this on a different slide, but I'll consolidate for us. It's a simile is this simple. X is like Y. Something is like something else. That's how we compare them, right? So in this case, I want to be very clear there. So what happens to a dream deferred? Does it, what's the it in this second stanza, you guys?
Dream.
Good, beautiful. Okay, if you're with me there, then we can do the same analysis here. So in this poem, it's a simile, a dream deferred is like a what?
Raisin in the sun.
That's right. Or does it fester like a what?
Or?
Thank you. Does it stink like what?
Rotten meat.
Thank you.
Rotten meat.
Thank you. Does it crust and sugar over like a?
Syrup sweet.
Maybe it sags like a?
Heavy load.
Good. So any type of analysis of this poem, you guys, you would definitely need to talk about similes, right? This whole poem is asking, it asks a question, which is another really fun and interesting thing to do in poems. I don't know if Oscar is here with us, I think, but Neruda is my favorite poet in any language, and many of his poems ask questions. I think asking questions in poems is wonderful. But either way, we've got this simile over and over. Now, there is another important vocabulary word here. Do we know what deferred means? And if we don't, then of course, you know, just like anything, you guys, it's worth it to do a little bit of research, you know, not even really real research, but just look up some meanings here.
Different, it's not the from word different, like different.
That's close. I don't defer. I see. Defer is, here they're giving us the verb. Langston Hughes is using it like an adjective, so you got to be careful with this. But the definition is to choose to do something at a later time. She'll defer her position. Defer means she'll do it later. She'll do it later. So when he says a dream deferred, this means like a dream that is not happening now. It is not present. It's been put on hold. We're waiting, right?
Like the word delay.
Good, exactly. I love that. Like the word delay. Exactly correct, Linda. Exactly correct.
Will happen in future.
Exactly. Hopefully, inshallah, we pray will happen in the future. Yeah, exactly. So he's talking about what happens to a delayed dream. If we were going to paraphrase this poem, which, you know, paraphrasing poems makes me sad, but it's good to paraphrase to understand the meaning here. So what happens to a delayed dream? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, fester like a sore, and then run? We get all these similes to talk about the delayed dream, right?
Why is it delayed? If it's
Well,
he's asking the question, why is it happening? Is it got dry up? Is it got thing? So it's basically saying why is it delayed, and then explanation.
now we're going to talk about it. Now we're going to switch from the simile. Now, again, I'm not expecting you guys to do this on your own. There's a reason we're doing these examples together here, right? But if you think about the history of the United States of America, and I told you that the name of this poem asks about delayed dreams and then uses many similes to talk about delayed dreams. But the title of the poem is this part of New York City where Black people lived. Can we make some guesses about what we think that the author is talking about?
Yes, but it talks about the movement.
Yes, absolutely. So what's the dream? If we think about Harlem, and this is 1920s, right? Langston Hughes, another extremely important American poet. He's writing poems in New York City in 1910, 1920.
There is a racial issue.
Exactly correct. Exactly correct. Exactly correct. So the title of the poem, in this case, the title of the poem, now again, there's a reason here I didn't ask you to do this by yourself. The title of the poem is almost the metaphor, right? Like, so I hope that you start to see simile, 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 all the way down. And even if we didn't look up what the word Harlem was, you guys, I hope you could still tell me there are similes in this poem, right? Like there are I think there's 4 similes in this poem. But without some cultural knowledge or without me explaining to you, maybe you don't understand the deeper metaphor, because when he names the poem Harlem, then we understand, whoa, okay, so this whole poem is kind of a metaphor for what happens to people who are waiting too long, what happens for people who want a better life, but they can't get it yet. And the simile of sorting, it feels like a raisin in the sun, or it feels like a wound, like a cut, or whatever it feels like, then these similes become even more deep, to use the lake.
Now I get it.
We kind of see how deep down the meaning of the poem is. And I want to be clear here, you guys. Even if you don't see, I think I've said this twice, but it's very important to me, so I hope you understand. Even if you don't see how deep the lake is, you can still enjoy the sounds of the poem, right? You can still see the images. Whoa, like a raisin in the sun. Everybody knows what a raisin is. You know what I mean? You get that feeling in your mind. And then we get this line that's really painful. Does it stink like rotten meat? It's like even ugly sounds, right? Stink, rotten meat. Even if you don't know anything about US history, you can still hear those sounds that are in the poem, right? And again, I keep saying, this is what I'm talking about, like my dream, is that you start to feel a little bit comfortable doing both, a little bit of analysis of the structure and a little bit of responding, a little bit of the deeper meaning of the poem. That was a lot of talking. Questions about this poem or examples or anything?
So basically, simile is the comparison. It's comparing.
Totally.
Okay.
And very clearly, to go back to last week, right? By using the word like, right? And I should just say this. Why did I use a weird math example? My heart is like a drum, right? That's what this is. My heart is like a drum.
Mm-hmm.
I want a different color because I'm weird. Yeah. This one is, excuse me. This one is, my heart is a drum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what Linda was saying. Linda, excellent student. She was like, ooh, is in the Fire and Ice poem, right? She goes, she saw the word is, and she was like, ooh, metaphor, metaphor, metaphor. Excellent, that's true. But remember, not every time we use the be verb is a metaphor. It might be, but not every single time. So simile is, my heart is like a drum. Metaphor is, my heart is a drum, right? My heart is a drum. And this poem is really, really rich with simile. Mm-hmm. And then it takes that sort of deeper awareness of history for you to really understand the full, to use my language here in question 2, the central metaphor. I'm not asking you about the central metaphor in Dream Deferred, because I don't expect you guys to know about, 1920s Black America. I don't have that expectation. But that's a little bit about how simile and metaphor go together. Yes. What else about this poem?
Simile over here is the raisin in the sun, the rotten meat, the sugar over, no, the syrup sweet, right?
Yep, absolutely. Let's do the same thing here. I'll duplicate this slide. Similes for Harlem, just so that we all know what I'm talking about here. In the poem, he says that a dream deferred is like a raisin in the sun. What else?
What is it? It festers like a sore.
Yep. Good. What else?
And then the rotten meat, sugar.
Rotten meat.
Thank you, Frank. What else?
Or crust, or sugar over meat, over like a syrup sweet.
Excellent. I think we got one more.
Bags.
Heavy load.
Excellent. Thank you, Sanad. A heavy load. And you see, and notice here, what the thing being compared is always the dream deferred. And he's using the simile to say, is it like this? Is it like this? Is it like this? Maybe it's like this. And then notice here again, this is the sort of, now we start to see here how the way that these stanzas are organized does give the reader a strong feeling here, because notice in the last stanza, only one line, we don't get a simile, do we? He just asks, he doesn't compare it to anything. Instead of comparing it to something, instead of saying what it is, he says what it does, right? Or he's asking, right? Maybe it does this, maybe it does that. And I understand, right? We could say the same thing. Does it up here. But then at the end, we don't get a simile, right? He just asks, maybe it just explodes. And again, if you think about this, there's no wrong answer here, you guys. When you see that word explode, what do you feel or think about? A bomb, absolutely. Yes, of course, right? Of course. Or a gun, or a weapon, or something, right? I mean, or a volcano. What else explodes?
Over here, I mean, it's not the bomb. Well, obviously it says, or does it explode? So it doesn't give some, the difference.
I love it.
Happen.
I love it. And of course, we don't know, right? Like this is again, now my question here. So, now I'm going back again a little bit to think about this activity here. How does the poem end, right? And why does it end this way? Well, we could say about this poem, it ends with, it talks about explosion. Now, why does it end this way? I'll give you my answer. Again, I think you need a little bit of US history to answer this question. I think he's sort of saying, hey, how long are we going to wait? And you all know, we saw what happened last year. I think it exploded last year. We're talking about Black history in the United States of America. It flipping exploded in the summer, right? I mean, people out in the streets. I mean, like, this is the same question we could talk about at the end of this poem. What happens to a dream deferred? We could talk about the same thing in 2020. And now explosion, does it have to mean violence? Does it have to mean murder? Does it have to mean guns and bombs? I hope not. But this feeling of explosion, build, explode, right? While we're waiting for something, I think he's getting at that. Now, again, I'm not asking you to analyze this poem like that, because I think to understand the last line of the poem, the way I just said, you need a little bit of US history. But for Fire and Ice, we were talking about heaven and hell. That's some eternal stuff. You don't need US American history to think about, hatred and desire and fire and ice. And oh my God, that stuff we all think about one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? What else? Questions, ideas?
Like I feel here, or I think, or I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Like the last or when he said, or does it explode? I think he gave a result for all his questions in this poem.
Go, tell me more. I think you're right, but tell me why. I agree.
Like when he said, does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or when he said like a rotten meat or sugar over or whatever he's saying, it's all of it is negative, like negative impact, or like I said, negative things. So and then the last he said explode. So just like explode. So I think he gave the result of all of these questions.
Yes, that's like his answer, almost like he answers his own question at the end, right, Linda? I agree. And I'll say this now again, you don't need, when you write about your poems, you don't need to write like I'm going to say here, but I think one other reason Linda feels that way is the last line is its own stanza. This is what I mean about how poets organize the stanzas, is giving the reader a feeling too. So we get this long stanza and then a 2-line stanza and then boom. So it does almost have that feeling of like, boom, this is my answer. This one line is the last thing I have to say about this poem, right? And that's not only how does the poet organize the lines, it's where does the poet choose to start and stop a new stanza, right? All of these things are having, whether we know it or not, right, are having an effect on us and how we feel as we read the poem,
Yeah.
I think this poem is they are talking about for the people live over here. They are struggled to survive at this time, so they want to do the think about how gonna be happen in future.
Yep.
So this standard ask us what asking us this whole poem.
I agree.
I figure out.
I agree. Well, I'm glad you guys like this one. So I love this poem, but sometimes it's because you do kind of need some context, right? US history context for this poem, but I'm glad it makes sense to you guys. Yeah, it's again, this poem is honestly like a classic of American literature. This is one of the most important poems written in US history. It's a very, very famous, very important American poem. Very, very important poem. I don't know if I'll have time next week, but you know, Langston Hughes, I'll just show you his picture. Wait, let me see something. I've got a different PowerPoint here, but maybe it's worth showing to you guys if you like the poem. Excuse me while I open up my files here. No, that's wrong topic. No, I'm almost there. This was from last year when I did a different poem. If I can't find it, I'll do it later. I'm sorry, this is very boring. I'll do it later. I'll just show you his picture. Here he is. Yeah, I mean, one of the most important poets in American history. So, all good. We know you got to go get the kids. It's all good. It's all good. Any other questions about this poem or ideas about Harlem? So because I think we get a little bit deeper understanding now, I think we're kind of good on some of these ideas. So let's talk again about, because for discussion 9, and of course for the poetry project, I'm going to ask you to respond to some of the poems here. So let's think about these 3 questions about fire and ice, and we'll do this in our slides so that everybody can follow along with me here. Oh, I have a slide here, I think, already. Yes, I'm so happy that I did this already. And then let me copy this. I guess we're kind of just doing homework together, but you know, I mean, it's the pandemic. What are we going to do? I'll read this poem one more time, but I want to just sort of practice going through these 3 questions with fire and ice, which is what I want you to do for the discussion activity, right? So fire and ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So question 1, what happens to the persona or the main character in this poem? What happens? What's the action of this poem? What's going on? What's the speaker of this poem doing?
He's describing hate.
Good. There is some, I love that. Absolutely. So we can make a list here. The persona describes hate and, well, let's add to it. Let's go to hate and what? It rhymes with fire.
Right?
It rhymes with fire. He's describing hate and it's in line 3.
It is a desire.
Desire.
Oh, yeah. The persona describes hate and desire. Good. What else does the persona do? And I'll say, look at those first 2 lines. When he says he or she, we don't know, right? We don't know, man or woman. The poet is a man, but we don't know if this is a man or woman. But some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. What is he talking about right away in line 1? In line 1. Some say the
world will end.
Thank you.
The end.
Right. He's talking about the end of the world. That's what this poem is about, right? The persona is talking about the end of the world. And here we can say line 1. The persona describes hate and fire. This is sort of in the whole poem, right? So he's talking about the end of the world. The persona is describing hate and desire. Now here's another question. What connect these 2 ideas for me, you guys? He's talking about the end of the world. He describes hate and desire. What's the connection between hate and desire and the end of the world? The world will end because of what? Susanna's driving. We can't make her talk, which is good. We have to make someone else talk. The persona suggests the world will end because of what?
Of the hate.
Yep, hate or what?
Oh, same. You mean same, hate and desire?
Exactly right. And remember, I just want to be clear here. The persona describes hate and desire, but he seems to say hate or desire, right? Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. So some say that we're all going to die in fire. Some say we're all going to die in ice. Some say we're all going to hell. Some say we're all going to heaven. Whatever it is, however we want to talk about this, right? But he's sort of giving 2 options. He's sort of giving 2 options, right? And we already talked about this. The persona compares fire to desire and hate to ice, right? And if we think about it, this is kind of the only action that happens, right? If we think about Professor Noor's questions from the book, what happens to the persona? This is really what the persona does. The persona is talking about the end of the world, describes hate and desire, suggests the world will end because of hate or desire, and compares fire to desire and hate to ice. This is kind of the only action. And this is really different, right? Some poems are stories. Some poems say, you know, we took a trip, and or think of the Cups of Jade poem. You know, the woman is saying, we were sitting by the pool and we were drinking our tea, and and the man was crying. This is like events. This is like a story. But this isn't exactly what we're doing. This isn't what we're doing in this type of poem. This is more like the action of the poem here. Does this make sense? And if it doesn't, stop me, because I'm going to ask you to do this. Andre? he's just tired or scared. I just heard Andre go,
Why he's so quickly from fire to ice?
Yes. Why, do you mean why?
His desire, hate. Yes. It's like one side of one middle.
Good. Oh, I like that. So now I think Andre's getting back to the response part, where Andre's going to say sort of his own feeling or opinion of the poem, which is great. I think we're going to save this idea for question 3, Andre. Question 1 here, what happens, is just trying to understand the action of, right? So save it. Let's talk about for question 2. So I think this is an example of what happens to the persona. Well, I mean, I'm telling you that's what happens. So now how about question 2? We talked about this a little bit, but question 2, is there a central object or metaphor in the poem that seems important? The answer is yes, there is one. What's the central metaphor in this poem?
The end of the world.
Yeah, ooh, I like that. That's good. The end of the world because of what, Sanad?
Because of fire or desire and.
Thank you.
Fire.
Or hate.
Or hate, which is ice.
Absolutely. And now a longer poem, you guys, in a longer poem, you may have more options, right? Like if I said central object or metaphor in Dream Deferred, you could talk about similes here, right? You could say, oh, we looked at this example poem where, let me go back here, where he's talking about this delayed dream. And then for the rest of the poem, he's just using similes to talk about the dream, right? So, but in a poem like this, we've really only got one central object, one central metaphor, which is desire and hate, right? Desire and hate. And that's all we can really say about this poem. I mean, about the metaphors of this poem. Now let's go to the third one. This is where, like Andre was saying, and where we can really have a little bit of fun. Question 3, how does the poem end and why does it end this way? This is where we could just, there's no right or wrong answer. So let me go through. I'm just going to read these last few lines where he says, but if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So if we go back to this question, the end of the world because of desire or fire, how does he answer his own question? What does he say? Which is it gonna be? Desire or hate?
Hate, ice.
Hate, ice.
And only hate or both? What do we think?
I think ice.
Ice.
Oh, good. I love that we've got some answers. I'm going to read it one more time. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. And I'll tell you right now, the word but and also are doing some very important work to make the meaning of this sentence here. So in line 3, he says, from what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So in his opinion, which one is more likely, desire or hate?
Desire.
Desire. Eso. And can someone give me another synonym for desire here? I have one in my mind. But can anyone think of another way to talk about desire? What happens when people have desire, like non-stop, never-ending desire? They keep wanting more. What do we call that?
Wish.
Well, but sometimes in a negative way. What when people just want more all the time?
They end up losing their lives sometime. They commit suicide too.
Well,
Sometimes.
that's interesting too. Absolutely. Let me see if I can go to synonyms. Yeah, if you can never have enough, never have enough, never have enough. Let me see if we get it.
That's very common in actors, you know, movie actors and those famous people.
You can't get enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The word
Matter
I want.
of fact, last week I was reading, I don't know if you have read that, but the news about this guy who was building a $500 million house in LA.
What happened?
And then he wasn't able to pay for that house, and then now he's gonna sell it for 100 million.
Jeez. A good example, right? Like never is enough. No matter, you know, not enough money. I need more money, bigger houses, more whatever, you know, more.
Yeah, it has 15 pools and all that.
Well, that's really important. You know, one person definitely needs 15 pools. The word that I was thinking of here is greed, right? We've also got some other good synonyms for desire here, right? I'm in thesaurus.com. Greed or hunger or lust or need, yearning. I mean, we've got all these. So desire is, now partly this is a little bit old poem. So maybe the word desire is a synonym for greed, or what's the other one that I wanted? Avarice, right? Avarice is one of the 7 deadly sins, thinking about heaven and hell, you know. Greed, ambition. Ambition is great, but never-ending ambition is hard. Good. So he seems to suggest that desire will be the end of the world. But maybe the word desire is a synonym for greed or avarice, or the feeling of never enough. But in line 5, he suggests that what? He says, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Right? So in line 5, he says, hey, at the beginning of the poem, he says, I think it's going to be greed. I think it's going to be desire. We're all going to burn in desire fire, right? But actually, you know, if the world ends twice, he suggests that maybe could be the end of the world. Maybe hate could cause, or could because ice, excuse me, would suffice. That's that great rhyme at the end there. So maybe now we can talk about this just as a class here before we finish up. Excuse me. So if we think about Professor North's question, how does the poem end and why does it end this way? What do we think? Yeah, at first, he asks the question, how will the world end? And he says, I think it's going to be fire. And then he says, actually, you know what? It could be ice. It could also be ice. That could be fine too. So why do we think the poem ends this way? No right or wrong answer here. What is that? What feeling does it give you?
That's he asked us to think what's good or right, or have to we need a lot thinking about this poem.
Totally
so
agree.
that he suggests.
I love it.
So both fire and ice is a problem for this time. Even it still have a problem.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So at the end, Frank is sort of saying at the end, when the poet says, well, I think it could be this, but it also could be this, it does make the reader start to think about it. I think you're right. So at the end, the reader goes, oh, well, what do I think? So I do think you're right. The way he ends the poem encourages the reader to ask themselves that question too. I totally agree, Frank. I totally agree. Anybody else?
Why he called perish twice? This desire is perish and no this desire. This is to perish. Twice perish.
Yeah. This is a great question, Andre. And I think, remember, again, I was reading some of the answers for people's questions about ambiguity. I remember Andre's answer was fantastic. I do think that this is maybe the part of the poem that's the most ambiguous, the most unclear. That line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th line. But if it had to perish twice, yeah, what's going on there? So he's sort of saying, but if the world ended 2 times, or are we talking about, like, if we think about heaven and hell, right? Are we talking about sort of the end of times and the rebirth of the new world? Are we talking about the kingdom of heaven? Are we talking about revelation? What are we talking about here? And I think you're right, Andre. It's very interesting. It's very ambiguous. So now I'll be a very sort of classic English teacher, and instead of answering your question, I will ask you, what do you think? When it says perish twice, does that make you feel optimistic and happy? Does it make you sad and angry? Like, how does that line feel for you? Because it is ambiguous. I think it's very interesting. What do you think, Andre?
Yeah, if the word is end of time, yes, perish twice. Why the person wants to end of the world? No, for all people.
Good. Okay, I love that. So Andre's saying, maybe you didn't say this, Andre, but you could say, I don't like this line because it implies, it suggests that there will be an end of the world no matter what. I think that's what you're saying, right, Andre? Is like, why is he saying, well, it's gonna end one way or the other? Why does it have to be like this, right? Why does it have to perish twice? Is that right?
Yes, why person? It's not me. But he said world.
Perfect.
End of the world.
I love
it. It's touch me.
I love it. I love it. In my opinion, and now this is where, remember, again, I'll say we're practicing responding. So this isn't the one perfect answer, right? There is one perfect answer for how many stanzas? 1. How many lines? 9. But for did you like it, or this, how does it end and why? Like Andre's saying, in my opinion, this is pessimistic or unpleasant or something, right? This is pessimistic because I hope that there will be a way to avoid the end of the world or something like this. I'm just sort of making this up, Andre. Of course, these are not your words here, but exactly what Andre just did, you guys, sort of saying, ooh, it made me think this way and feel this way. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about responding to poems at the end. Is can you start to make connections? Like I was saying, the surface of the poem, the sounds, the words, the structure, the lines, and the deeper meaning. How did I feel? Why did I feel that way? When you can make those connections, that's what we're doing. That's all that we're doing. Thank you, Andre. Fantastic. Anybody else want to talk about this question number 3 about fire and ice?
Yes.
Frank, please.
Yes. So you said the desire gonna be that they end up, but is it okay to fire and ice together to conclude? It's gonna be my opinion.
You think both, like at the same like it won't be one or the other, it could be both together?
Yes.
I love
That,
yes, absolutely, Frank. Totally.
thank you.
Yep. I love it. Now we're responding, now we're responding to poetry. 100%, Frank. Absolutely. Anybody else about this poem or about, that question number 3 that we're going to practice? How does the poem end and why? Any other ideas or questions? Cool. I know I said that I was going to introduce the poetry project. I'm going to wait and do it next week because it's not right. We need some more time to practice this. I'm really glad that we reviewed this, and I'm glad that we talked about it like this, and it's not fair to just throw the assignment at you right now. Especially metaphor and simile. I will go as slow as we need with metaphor and simile, you guys, because I promise you, it's actually easier to understand simile and metaphor in poetry than in longer stories. So I want to make sure you guys feel good about metaphor and simile in poetry before we look at the novels, okay? So I published let me fix this in Canvas. So what I want you to do then now is do this discussion activity, right? We kind of just did it together, but do it. Right? Go do it, answer these questions, practice answering these 3 questions about fire and ice. If you go fast, I might ask you to respond to another poem that we didn't do together, but I want to see your answers first, okay? And right now I'm going to change, I'm going to go in here and change the poetry project because I had it due in 2 weeks, but we'll have it due in 3 weeks, okay? If you want to, or if you care, you can go look at the instructions, but I'm not going to answer questions about it, or I'm not going to even talk about it until next week. Next week, no matter what, I will introduce the assignment and make sure you know what you're doing. But the first draft will not be due until 3 weeks from today. Okay, so I just changed the due date. That's it. That's all I've got for today. We can even end a few minutes early. Any ideas or questions or anything? I know we talked about one poem for 2 hours, but you can kind of see how, in my opinion, how rich and beautiful and deep and interesting thinking about poems in this way can be. So I hope it was useful for you guys. Ideas or questions before we finish up?
Are we going to practice more?
Yeah, I think next week, since I'm going to add 1 more week for poetry, we'll do something like this. But I hope that, here's my dream. Yes, we will practice more, Susanna. So let me just keep it short. Yes. And I really hope that you can, if you're watching with me on the video recording or you're here with me live, I hope that you can do lesson 9 so that you feel a little bit comfortable with these 3 questions. And then we can talk a little bit about rhyme. I really do want to talk about rhyme next week if we're ready, okay? So please try to do lesson 9, responding to poetry. I'll put that in the end here. Finished before 9, what's next week? 9/27. Finished lesson 9. Discussion, responding to poetry. And again, it will help you because as I said, part of the poetry project is going to be responding to a poem. So these 3 questions, right? What happens to the persona? Is there a central metaphor? And how does the poem end? You're going to do that for the project. So I want you to get comfortable with this. I really, really do.
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions or ideas?
No.
You are wonderful. I love poetry and I love talking about it with cool students like you guys. If you need anything or have any questions, you know what to do. Send me an email, send me a text message. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording. I can stay and answer questions, but otherwise I'll see you next week.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank